Here at 105.5 WDHA, my guests this morning on All Mixed Up, the legendary bass player Leland Sklar and film producer Denny Tedesco. Good morning and welcome.
Good
Thank you.
morning.
Good to be here.
Denny, I'm going to start with you, and it's really more of a comment than a question. You, of course, had done the Wrecking Crew documentary, and your dad was a part of the Wrecking Crew. And all I could think of, Denny, was as you as a kid with your friends with the radio on going, yeah, it's my dad. Yeah, my dad's on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's my dad. Watching television. Yeah, my dad's on that too. What was that like for you?
I didn't know any of it. None of us.
Really?
No, no. Dad went to work. He didn't know what he did sometimes. You figure he's going in 19, I'm born in 61. And, so even, he's going to work. He's recording, let's say 4 sessions a day, four different recordings, maybe three or four different recordings. He's doing a bunch of songs for each artist. He doesn't even know who the artist is sometimes. They aren't even showing up. Or like a Phil Spector day, maybe he's doing it, he doesn't know it's the Ronettes. Or a great example was the Fifth Dimension when he did Up, Up and Away, and it was Jimmy Webb that gave him a nice charm with a Grammy on it, Grammy charm to put on the bracelet. And he said, "What's this for?" He goes, "Well, that's for the song we do with the Fifth Dimension. It's got album of the year or song of the year, and it was Up, Up and Away." My father had no idea
Hmm.
because he was constantly working. He never really took note of what he was doing. It's impossible. And
Yeah.
they didn't spend time with like these guys in the 70s. These guys spent way more time with the music and with the artist. So in a sense that my father did a lot of factory work, in a sense. It was quick and get in and get out. I mean, it sounds awful, but it's not that bad. It's just the way the business was.
And these guys you're referring to are the subject of the new documentary, Immediate Family, which is now available on a variety of streaming services. So, Leland, let me ask you, and if you look behind me, I would venture to say you're on at least 50% of the CDs that are behind me. When you went in to do sessions, were you aware of the artists who you were recording for?
It ran the gamut. Like if I was working with Phil Collins, I know who Phil Collins was or Barbara Streisand, but there's so many times where we've done projects where we have no idea who the artist is going to be. We're in cutting tracks, and then the artist will come in later. And so, sometimes I'll be walking through the supermarket and I'll hear something playing, and I kind of just it there's a familiarity in it, and it takes a while because I never heard it completed. I was there for the rhythm section day, and then later on they bring in strings and background singers and horns and then the singer. So sometimes I'll go, "Oh God, that's." So it runs the gamut, but very much like what Tommy Tedesco and all those guys went through. You're going to work, and sometimes I've done things where I'm in for 4 hours and I got to do 9 tracks for somebody, so you don't, at the end of the day you're in a blur. You've done the best you can and you've left, and the next day you go, what the hell did I do yesterday? So it's hard, at times, but you're just grateful to be working.
One of
It's
the
it's
things that I've noticed in both the Wrecking Crew and in this new one, Immediate Family, Denny, is the versatility of these musicians was incredible. You mentioned that your dad didn't necessarily know who he was recording, but one day maybe a session for Frank Sinatra, and the
Yeah.
next day maybe he's doing a Monkees or a Beach Boys track. The ability to go from one to the other is just amazing.
Yeah, and that's what all these musicians have is versatility. I mean, my father was a different animal in itself because he could play the banjo, the mandolin, bouzouki, oud, whatever it is, string instrument. He didn't have to be the best at it. He just needed to get the flavor of it, and that's what he would always, he's not going to be the greatest banjo player. He just has to pretend to be a great banjo player.
Leland,
There's
I did a
millions.
lot of sessions with his dad, and he was like one of the most entertaining people I've ever known in my life. And there were some life-changing moments sitting next to him in the studio, and I just kind of went, "So this is how it works." He was a great mentor without thinking he was a mentor. But that whole bunch of people, Hal Blaine and Larry Knechtel and Al Casey and Dennis Budimir and all these people, and I'm still like a huge respect and fan of Carole K's bass playing and what she contributed. So it was really wonderful to have had time playing with those people during a transitory period where our guys were coming in as they were phasing out just because the music scene was changing, and the artists that we got to work with, the James Taylors and Carole Kings and Jackson Brownes, they really wanted to have a more intimate relationship in the studio with the players because we were going to spend time really developing the songs, where when the Wrecking Crew would come in, for the most part, they had charts in front of them and then they would put their personality onto it. But there was a lot of, thought in advance for them, where a lot of times when we would show up, there was nothing. And we were starting from scratch with somebody just sitting at a piano or a guitar and then crafting these parts. And then the fun of that was we had such strong relationships with all these people that when the album got finished, they'd say, "You want to go on the road?" And we go, "Yeah, let's do it." So we got to play live all these songs. And that was a whole other thing than the Wrecking Crew had ever experienced.
Leland, you mentioned working with Tommy Tedesco, Denny's dad, and you
Yeah.
just did an interview fairly recently with Rick Beato, and you told an amazing story. I know you'll tell it better than I will, but Denny just mentioned the number of instruments that his dad played. You tell an amazing story in that interview with Rick Beato.
Well, I mean, we were doing, it might have been a show like Airwolf. It was a TV show. And we were at Universal Studios, used to have a recording studio on the grounds where we did like Magnum PI and all these shows. Sitting, we had baffles set up that would be like this high, so you'd kind of see half of somebody's face. So it was kind of like Kilroy in there for those that would know that. But I'm sitting next to Tommy, and the conductor is way across the room, and there's probably about 40-piece orchestra in there. And he says to Tommy, he goes, "Could you try like mandolin on this?" So Tommy bends down to pick up a mandolin and starts playing. He goes, "No, I don't hear that." And he goes through a litany of instruments that he wouldn't. And Denny, and Tommy just keeps bending over and picking up another. Well, I'm dying because I'm looking at Tommy, and all he has is his acoustic guitar with him. So he just keeps bending over like he's picking something else up, and until the guy finally heard what he wanted to hear. And that's when I looked at Tommy afterwards. I said, "In all my year, I've been playing since I was 5 years old, and I'm watching this." And I said, "I just learned more in 5 minutes how this business works than I've learned in my entire life up to this point." And that's when I went home and I drilled a hole in my bass and I just put a switch on it. It had no wires or anything going to it. So when people would ask me for a special sound, I would make sure they could see you flip the switch. And then I would just play in a different position, and they'd go, "Cool, that's great." But it's kind of like there's so much of this that can really be smoke and mirrors. I mean, I'm sure the conductor would have been pissed if he would have walked over and looked behind the baffle and saw Tommy was just sitting there with acoustic guitar. But Tommy was that good a musician that every time he sat up, that guitar sounded different because he could make it be something else. And as long as the guy thought somebody's trying to do something, he was happy with it.
I think it's James Taylor in Immediate Family. I think he's the one who says that you guys who were the session musicians were really like co-writers on the song. How much input did you really have?
Well, it would really depend. Everything is predicated on the song at that moment, because one song he might have like a bass part in his mind that he wants, and he might suggest that, and I'd go, "That's perfect, that's great." I don't want to have to think of everything every second. So it's great. There was always very collaborative when we were in the studio. We'd start working, and things could be floating around like this, and all of a sudden it comes together, and you're thrilled that you've got a great engineer that captures it, and then it's done. But you never know from song to song what's the demand that's going to be there. And there's so many things that can get adjusted during the course of that process when you're working like that. I mean, we'd be in there working on songs, and we'd go, "It needs a bridge." And then the band would get together and kind of figure out a bridge or a better intro for the song. Is the song going to have an end, or is it going to fade? So you'd figure out an ending for it if they wanted to end. So we would contribute a lot to the arrangement of the things, not so much the song itself, but to the structure and the arrangement of it. And most of the artists were always thrilled to have more input, because there's when you're just sitting by yourself creating your songs and stuff, it's a whole other animal to get in a room with other players. You got to start thinking time, and stuff. Because when you're by yourself, you can do whatever you want. But when you're trying to make it into a record, there's other things that come into play. So it's a beautiful, beautiful process to make records. And I feel so blessed that I've been able to spend my entire life as a working musician. It's a rarity, and it's getting harder and harder as time goes on for younger players that would love to do what we've done, but that world doesn't exist anymore. So it's a lot more difficult for them, you know. So I try to be real supportive of the new generations coming along.
The documentary Immediate Family is available on a variety of streaming services. It's a wonderful watch, as was The Wrecking Crew. Denny Tedesco, producer, and Leland Sklar, bass player, thank you so much for your time this morning here on WDHA and All Mixed Up.
Thank you so much.